The air in the rose garden carries a particular weight, a mix of fresh-cut grass and the heavy perfume of the blooming flowers that surround the podium. On a day like this, with the sun catching the white columns of the south portico, the scene is set for pronouncements of legacy. And when the president steps up to the microphone, the topic isn't a fleeting political skirmish or a distant foreign policy crisis, but something far more tactile, something every single American feels in the bones of their cars and the soles of their shoes. The announcement lands with the force of a gavel on a marble counter, a $10 billion injection into the veins of the nation, a plan to finally address the sprawling, creaking, and crumbling network of roads and bridges that stitches this country together. It's a number so large it almost becomes abstract, a figure that gets thrown around in budget debates until it loses all meaning, a mere statistic in a headline. But to understand what $10 billion actually means, you have to forget the zeros for a moment and look at it through a different lens. You have to picture it not as money, but as material, as manpower, as the physical manifestation of political will meeting the ground beneath our feet. This isn't just about filling potholes, though that's a part of it, the most immediate and irritating part for anyone who has jolted their morning coffee onto their dashboard. This is about a fundamental reimagining of what it means to move. For decades, the conversation around American infrastructure has been one of neglect, a slow-motion tragedy of deferred maintenance. We've become accustomed to the worn-out signs, the rusted steel beams of overpasses we traverse without a second thought, the bottlenecked interchanges that turn commutes into tests of human endurance. We've accepted it as the cost of living in a country built for a different century. But this plan, as it's laid out, is an attempt to drag that century-old vision into the present. It's a recognition that the interstate highway system, that grand project of the Eisenhower era that was once the envy of the world, has become a symbol of obsolescence. The conversation in the Rose Garden wasn't just about concrete and asphalt. It was about commerce, about safety, about the very connective tissue of the economy. Consider the bridge, that most poetic of engineering feats. There are over 600,000 bridges in the United States, and a startling percentage of them are classified as structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. These aren't just scary terms for engineers. They are the reason a school bus has to take a detour, the reason a farmer's produce takes longer to reach a processing plant, the reason an ambulance might have to go the long way around. The $10 billion plan funnels a significant portion of its weight toward these specific choke points. It's targeting the infamous spans that have become shorthand for infrastructure failure, like the Brent Spence Bridge connecting Kentucky and Ohio, a corridor so congested and outdated that it's become a national punchline for political gridlock. The funding is designed to cut through that gridlock, not just of traffic, but of bureaucracy. It's seed money for a new era of construction, promising to not only repair the failing bones of these structures, but to rebuild them with a modern understanding of traffic flow, of climate resilience, of the sheer tonnage of modern freight. The other half of the equation, the roads themselves, is where the plan touches the most people. It's one thing to talk about a famous bridge in another state. It's another to drive on a highway that feels like a lunar landscape. The funding allocated for roadways is vast, but its application is meant to be precise. It's for the rural highway that cuts through farmland, its shoulders too narrow for modern farm equipment, creating a deadly dance between a combine harvester and a semi-truck. It's for the urban artery that was designed 50 years ago, before the suburbs exploded, and now serves as a parking lot for 2 hours every morning and evening. The vision extends beyond simple resurfacing. There's a heavy emphasis on what they're calling complete streets, a design philosophy that acknowledges roads aren't just for cars. It means dedicated bus lanes that could actually make public transit a viable option, protected bike lanes that don't just end abruptly at a busy intersection, and wider, safer sidewalks for the millions of Americans for whom walking is the primary mode of transport. It's a quiet admission that the way we've been building our environment has isolated people. And this is a small, expensive step towards stitching communities back together. There's also an undeniable political calculus woven into the asphalt of this announcement. Infrastructure is one of the last truly bipartisan ideas in a deeply divided country. A senator from a rural state and a representative from a dense urban district may agree on very little, but they both have roads that are falling apart. They both have constituents who are tired of paying for alignments and tire replacements. By framing this as a $10 billion down payment, the administration is betting that the tangible, local nature of the projects will build a constituency for more. It's a strategy of visibility. When a new bridge goes up with a prominent plaque thanking the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, that's a political asset that lasts for decades. It's harder to attack something that your voters drive over every single day. The money becomes a physical argument for itself, a constant reminder that government, when it chooses to, can still build big things. It's a rebuttal to the cynicism that says Washington is permanently broken, one repaved mile at a time. But the ambition doesn't stop at the on-ramp. This isn't just a plan to rebuild what was, it's a plan to build for what's coming. And what's coming, undeniably, is the electric vehicle revolution. The current landscape is a patchwork of charging stations, a source of range anxiety for potential EV buyers, and a barrier to mass adoption. A significant slice of that $10 billion is earmarked not for gas stations, but for the infrastructure of the future. It's for building a national network of EV chargers along designated corridors, ensuring that a family can drive from New York to Los Angeles in an electric car with the same confidence they'd have in a gas guzzler. This isn't just about convenience, it's about sending a market signal. It tells automakers that the country is serious about electrification. It tells utilities that they need to prepare for a massive shift in demand. It's a foundational investment designed to catalyze a private sector transformation, using public dollars to de-risk the future and accelerate a transition that is as much about economic competitiveness as it is about the environment. Furthermore, the conversation around this funding inevitably turns to resilience. The old rules of engineering assumed a stable climate, a predictable world. We no longer have that luxury. The last few years have provided a brutal, live-action tutorial on what happens when infrastructure meets extreme weather. We've seen subway stations turned into waterfalls in New York. We've watched as Hurricane Ida's remnants washed away parts of the iconic Jersey Shore. We've witnessed the atmospheric rivers of the West Coast turning highways into rivers. This plan forces a reckoning with that new reality. It requires that projects built with this money are designed to withstand the storms of tomorrow, not the calm of yesterday. That means raising roadways in flood-prone areas, using more permeable materials to handle storm surge, reinforcing bridges against higher winds and heavier rains. It's the most expensive kind of insurance, an upfront payment to avoid the catastrophic costs of inaction later. A recognition that the greatest threat to our infrastructure isn't age or neglect, but the changing world around it. And then there's the human element, the part that doesn't show up in the engineering specs or the budget documents. Behind every mile of highway that gets repaved, there is a construction worker who can now provide for their family. Behind every bridge that gets retrofitted, there is an engineer who gets to apply their skills to a problem that matters. This plan is being sold not just as a fix for things, but as a generator of opportunity. The promise of Buy American provisions is woven into the funding, an attempt to ensure that the steel is American-made, the labor is American workers, the economic benefit stays in American communities. It's a vision of a different kind of economy, one where the value isn't just extracted by shareholders, but is embedded in the community itself. A new road doesn't just move cars, it creates a corridor of commerce. Small businesses pop up near new exits. Property values stabilize. The very character of a place can be reshaped by the quality of its connections to the outside world. This investment is a bet on that ripple effect, a belief that fixing the arteries will make the whole body healthier. Of course, the path from a rose garden speech to a finished project is never a straight line. The money has to be allocated, the contracts let, the environmental reviews completed. There will be delays, cost overruns, and political squabbles over which project gets funded first. The $10 billion, as enormous as it is still just a fraction of what's needed. The American Society of Civil Engineers consistently grades the country's infrastructure a D+, estimating the total investment gap in the trillions. So this plan is not a finish line. It's a starting gun. It's a test of whether the country can still muster the collective will to do big, complicated, expensive things. It's a proof of concept for the idea that government can be a competent partner in shaping the physical world. It's a declaration that the mundane, unglamorous work of maintaining and upgrading our public goods is actually one of the most profound responsibilities we have. So, as the president steps away from the podium and the Rose Garden empties, what's left is the promise embedded in the press releases and the fact sheets. It's the promise of a smoother ride, a shorter commute, a safer crossing. It's the promise of jobs that pay wages that can support a middle-class life. It's the promise of a country that looks at its aging bones and decides to rebuild, not just for comfort, but for ambition. It's a recognition that the roads and bridges we build are more than just concrete and steel. They are the skeleton of our society, the paths we walk to get to each other. And for the first time in a long time, there's a plan, funded with a figure that commands attention, to actually fix them. The work, the real, dirty, noisy, disruptive work, is just about to begin. And in the end, it won't be measured in billions of dollars, but in the quiet confidence of driving over a bridge without a second thought, or the simple relief of a highway that finally, after all these years, feels brand new.